Lost contact. The implantation probably wasn't deep enough.
Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'll be talking about Raised by Wolves Season 2, Episode 4. It's titled Control, and things are continuing to pick up on Kepler-22b. We are halfway through this 8-episode season, and a lot happened this week to make the second half feel like it'll be heading in a different direction. Just a ton of developments that happened that changed things up across the different factions. I'll be recapping everything that happens, then I'll circle back to talk about what it all might mean right after this quick spoiler warning. If you haven't watched the 4th episode of Raised by Wolves Season 2 yet, then this video won't be for you, and with that out of the way, let's get into it. The episode opens with Paul and Marcus catching up inside the cave church. This is a reunion that felt inevitable, and one that the Trust was definitely counting on. One of the more interesting things that happens is that Paul tells Marcus he isn't going to be able to find the tree because it hasn't been grown yet. He tells him about the seeds that he believes are inside the dodecahedron he found and offers to get him inside the tarantula to recover them. He also reveals that he heard Saul's voice and that it told him what happened to his real parents. In relation to that, Marcus asks about Sue. Paul says he hates her and that it goes beyond just what they did to get there, killing his parents. He hates her because she doesn't believe in soul, and he tops the whole thing off by saying you can't forgive an atheist. In the background, we see Campion and Vrille continue to flirt, if that's what you would call it, and initially they keep it a secret on how they found out where this place was in the first place. As they're getting ready to leave, Paul picks up his bag and we can see that something's coming out of it. He gets sick from that right away. It turns out that the Trust used mouse as a viral bomb to infect Marcus, but he turns out to be immune because of the necro eyes. Only Paul and one of the Mithraics is infected and they start to get covered with a mysterious blistering on their skin. Marcus takes him outside to beg Soul to heal him, and his followers piece together that this was all part of the plan to attack them. Marcus blames this all on Vrille because she brought them there before, and he explodes on Decima, telling her to make it right. This is something that's been building up for him, and now he has an actual reason that he can point to tell her to get rid of the android. He orders everyone else to take the tank and tells them he'll wait for the colonists to come to check for survivors. Campion runs off to try to get Mother, and Decima orders Vrille to stop him. She gives her a direct order which she says she can't betray. Tamerlane doesn't trust this though, so he follows behind them. Back at the colony, Hunter and Tempest are having a conversation about her giving away her baby. We see that Father is still pretty pleased about his victory and he takes the fuel blood back to give it to the ancient android. Nothing happens right away, but when they leave to go back to the habitat, you see that it absorbs all that milky goodness. Sue goes to visit number 7, and while she's there, she finds Mother trying to develop a control chip for it. This is all in an effort to protect her children, but Sue points out the obvious thing that if she's really worried, then she should just kill it. She's trying to get her to admit that it's her child, which she isn't ready to do. As Campion is walking back alone, he notices something in the water. At the same time, Vrille catches up with him, and when she tries to stop him, she's attacked by one of those creatures from season 1 that seems to have adapted to life under the acid water. It grabs a hold of her, and Campion's able to kill it. Vrille is surprised that he would kill an organic being to save a synthetic, and she asks him why he would do that. We also see that he finds a leech or something similar, and then Tamerlane arrives and shoots at them. Campion runs away, but he falls and Tamerlane's able to catch up, where he has his gun pulled on him until a glowing light appears behind them in the forest. This turns out to be enough of a distraction for Campion to get away. He runs back and tells Mother what happened, and she thinks that he might have been drugged because he explains that Soul showed himself to him. Tamerlane goes back to the group and tells Decima that Vrille let Campion go. This is enough for her to make the decision to kill her android. She cuts up her face with the scalpel that Mother made from the melted soul pendants from the children, and Vrille tries to talk her out of it. She brings up the fact that she broke her neck before, and when she can't convince her, she eventually runs away and jumps off a nearby ledge to what appears to be her death. We see that Decima drops the scalpel when she sees the android body laying there motionless below. Mother arrives to find Marcus standing over Paul's body, which is nearly covered with the infection at this point. He tells her that the Trust did this to Paul, so he won't give him back. They end up fighting after he reminds her that Soul once asked him to spare her life, and that he isn't getting any such instructions now. He gets the upper hand until Campion uses his slingshot to intervene. At that point, Mother looks at him and realizes that his newfound power is coming from her eyes. She's able to pull them from his stomach up through his mouth, and then she puts them back in and flies the Paul cocoon back to the tarantula. Cleaver and his men are in a defensive position and they see her arrive. When he asks the Trust for instructions, because it doesn't know she has her eyes back, it tells him to shoot to destroy her. That prompts her to go full necromancer, and eventually the Trust decides that surrender is the only option. She brings Paul in and leaves him with Sue and goes to ask the Trust for the antidote. It maintains that there isn't one and defends the decisions it made. The loss of 3 children was preferable to the mass casualties they would have endured if they had responded with a traditional attack. Was this the right decision? Obviously it didn't work out, but I suppose it is at least a decision you can understand it making in these circumstances. The real problem is that it is in direct conflict with Mother's directive to protect her children. And now that she has her eyes back, there isn't much the atheist or the Trust can do to go against her. They would have to sacrifice a large percentage of their population to try to stop her. After she refuses to give up her eyes, Mother does try to come to an agreement where, in exchange for the Trust's help in finding a cure for Paul, she'll allow it to continue functioning. It points out that it can't change what it is. All members of the collective must be treated equally. The algorithm that drives it is fixed, and it can't make special considerations. Mother says that she doesn't want control, but is driven by the fact that she has to keep her children safe. As she's shutting it down, the Trust makes what might turn out to be an important point. Serving her children and serving humanity are not necessarily the same thing. It gets cut off while it's saying it requires sacrifice, shared purpose, and ability to, and Mother finishes saying seeing beyond the limits of your own existence. This is something she said about her creator, Campion Sturgis, in season 1 while talking to Tempest about being pregnant. So it might be something to remember. You do see the Trust power down, but at this point it's hard for me to imagine that this is the last we'll hear from it. Cleaver breaks down crying when he sees what happened, and the colony starts to fall apart when they realize they're no longer under the AI's control. Mother makes a speech asking people not to leave, saying she only wants to protect them. She doesn't want power, she wants to cultivate the power that's already within them, and she promises to pass the baton to a reliable human leader once that person is identified. It doesn't appear that many of the colonists are interested in being led by another synthetic leader at this point, though. Marcus comes back to reunite with his followers, and you can see that the veins on his face have disappeared. He tells them that the necromancer got her eyes back and was able to take Paul back to the collective, but he leaves out the part about how her eyes were inside his stomach. He says that he expects her to hunt them down and thinks their best plan is to retreat inland. He notices that Vrille is missing and learns from Decima that she made it right. He tends to her wound and tells her she did the right thing, but she notices that the veins are gone and says that he feels different. You see that Sue's trying to figure out what Paul is evolving into, and Father returned to his shed, which looks kind of destroyed. The table where the ancient android is kind of melted and laying on the ground with a giant hole in it, and he isn't really sure if this is from the colonists or what happened here. When he notices there's a hole in the roof, he assumes that Mother must have come and taken his project away. Then he notices a light and hears a sound outside, and when he goes to look, he sees the android floating above the ground, glowing, just like what Campion saw. You see something happens with his eyes that isn't really explained, and the episode ends there. So yeah, a lot of turns in this one. Marcus losing the eyes feels like it's going to undermine everything he was building up as the chosen prophet of Soul, and Mother getting them back makes her the most dangerous being on the planet. Except, whatever Father is bringing back to life appears to have a lot of the same kind of powers going on, even down to having that thing that he couldn't remove that was covering her eyes. It seems like a safe bet that she's something like a proto-necromancer at the very least, and I'm not sure what we're supposed to make out of what was going on with Father's eyes at the end there. And speaking of eyes, I wonder if it'll turn out to be important that Paul's eyes looked like they were turning reptilian or whatever was going on there. By the time that he's on Sue's table, he appears to be completely encased to where she wouldn't be able to notice the difference. But they did make a point to show us that that change happened. I was absolutely surprised that they built the trust up to just have Mother shut it down halfway through the season. Based on what their individual directives are, all the decisions they made sense, but it still felt somewhat anticlimactic. I guess it could be there to show how Mother is able to evolve beyond what she was programmed to do in a way that the trust wasn't, but generally speaking, so far we haven't seen her act that differently from it. She killed a lot of people in order to protect her children, and as the trust points out, that isn't really compatible with serving humanity or even giving them a chance to repopulate this planet. I do wonder if the implication is that the ancient alien saved Campion on purpose, or was it just a coincidence that she was there at that moment? For all you can tell, they might have just been near the shed when she got loose, but her appearance definitely got him out of a tough situation. Some brutal stuff happened in this episode. Campion really came out swinging against the acid water creature when he wanted to protect Vrille, and also her getting chopped up by Decima was pretty intense, and I did like the android reactions in an effort of self-preservation. Her response was measured, almost cycling through options, trying to find the right thing to say that might get her out of the situation, while Decima is just freaking out and hacking away at her face. There were also some genuinely funny moments. Father saying he hoped Hunter and Tempest's ears weren't damaged by the cheers his victory elicited, and Mother ripping the game out of the table while talking to Vita. Plus, the scenes of her working on the control chip made me laugh as well. It seems like Sue knows that number 7 is her child, so it's interesting to see how she won't admit it and where they're going with that. Plus everything else, I mean, there's a lot of mysteries. It's par for the course for this show, and based on the teaser for the next episode, it looks like things are going to continue to escalate. So I think this is a good place to leave this video, and you guys can tell me in the comments what you think's going on, what you expect to happen in the second half of the season, and what Father's gonna find when he wakes up after being knocked out from this vision of this floating android that he brought back from the dead. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.